I'd now like to welcome Cassandra from the Hunter Cancer Biobank to briefly introduce herself and current research projects that the Biobank is involved with the hope to improve patient outcomes. Thank you so much, Cassandra, and of course to all the stall holders here today. Your presence is truly appreciated.
And the words are multiplied and now for something completely different. Not able to hear me, is that what I'm hearing? Okay. So Alicia has already spoken briefly about biobanking and the role that biobanking plays in research, but for anyone who's not familiar, a biobank is basically a tissue library, or a library of biological material. So solid tissues, blood, fluids, or basically anything that we can collect. There are animal biobanks and seed biobanks, but primarily we're interested in banking cancer samples. Biobanks help bridge that gap, and we talk a lot in research about moving from bench to bedside, from moving from discoveries that are found in labs into people so that they can actually make a difference, and that's one of the hardest parts about science. So we bridge that gap by allowing researchers to look at things they've found in the lab and kind of get a better idea of whether or not they might work in a person. So the Mark Hughes Foundation Brain Bank is a patient-driven program. One of the biggest hurdles in brain cancer is that there is a complete lack of these samples to enable researchers to move between bench and bedside. And in 2014, Hunter Cancer Biobank partnered with the Mark Hughes Foundation to set up the Mark Hughes Brain Bank. It was under a program known as the Virtuous Circle, which was designed to pair patient tissue samples that were collected during surgery with sequential samples that were collected each time those patients had a blood test for their doctor. And many of you here, I know, have consented to that program and regularly do donate blood samples to that program. So patients are offered the opportunity to participate when they first meet with the brain care coordinators or with their surgical team. And the samples that we collect are at key intervals throughout the patient's treatment. So prior to surgery, prior to starting treatment, after surgery, and then throughout the treatment to look at what those treatments might be doing to the cancer or how the patient's cancer might be responding or evolving. As Craig said, researchers don't always get things right, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that some researchers make is collecting all of these samples and hanging on to them. They don't do anything with them, and they've been given this amazing gift by generous patients, and they deserve to be used. So that's something that we believe really strongly in and something we work very, very hard at. There are 264 people who have donated to the Mark Hughes Foundation Brain Bank. And in addition to that, there have been well over 1,000 surgical samples donated to the bank. Since the bank was started, those samples have been used in a number of different projects. They include biomarkers for treatment response, so looking at why some people might respond and why some people don't, or who might respond better to a certain treatment. Looking at blood-based biomarkers for diagnosis, so trying to pick things up earlier and find a disease earlier. Looking at the role that your defence system, your immune system plays in cancer and how it might be used to help fight the cancer. Nutrition and brain cancer, so looking at potentially nutritional causes, or even better, looking at ways we can treat cancer by altering nutrition. Targeting nerves and how nerves can work with brain tumours, or how that can be cut off to try and fight brain tumours. And then overall looking at the molecular characteristics, so what makes that tumour tick. This is a bit of a special moment for all of us here. We often tell this story whenever we talk about the Mark Hughes Brain Bank, but until recently we haven't been able to share the name of the lady who started our whole brain donation program, and that's something that has always bothered her family members, and they've lobbied for a number of years for us to be able to speak freely about her. And I encourage all of you to have a quick Google when you leave here and read about her journey, because there have been videos made and a lot of interviews. 2 years after we established the Sequential Blood Program, one of our patients entered stage 4 of her diagnosis. Her name was Jackie Marsh, and she was a loving wife, mother of 4, and a foster mother of many, many, many more. She had one final wish, which was to donate her brain to brain cancer research once she passed away. It was a unique opportunity and not something that we dealt with here in Newcastle before. We looked into it and there were 2 options, one being the Newcastle Body Donor Program and the other being the Sydney Brain Bank. But neither of these programs specifically were designed to deal with brain cancer diagnosis, and it was felt at the time that neither of these programs were really suitable for what Jackie wanted to do. Donating brain tissue, as I'm sure many of you can imagine, is not a simple process. And as with organ donation for transplantation, once a person does pass away, there's a time frame that starts. There's no consensus data. In science, we always try to work to best practice or to consensus on what the best way is to do something, but there's no consensus data as to the best way to do this. And a lot of the models around brain banking have been designed for diseases like Alzheimer's or dementia or Parkinson's disease, which in some ways are the complete opposite of brain cancer. That's where we see a shrinking of tissue as opposed to a growth. So it's a very, very different scenario. From the research that we've done and from some of our collaborators in Sydney, we agreed on a 4-hour protocol, which meant we needed to set up a 24-hour donation team that were on call 365 days a year. Jackie passed away on Valentine's Day in 2017 at home with her family. And the legacy that she began in inspiring this brain bank has now extended to 21 amazing people from the Hunter region who have donated to our brain bank. These are ordinary people who have done something absolutely extraordinary. And while I can't share their identities with all of you, these are some of the stories that they told. We have everyone from a Tower of London guard to a kindergarten teacher, a blacksmith, an artist, a paediatric nurse. More than 50% of the grants that have been awarded to the researchers that we collaborate with, and we work with researchers across all streams of cancer and in other diseases outside of cancer, but more than 50% of the researchers that came to us in 2000 had a focus on brain cancer research. Many of those projects were sponsored by the Mark Hughes Foundation. There are currently 2 active projects that are using tissue that was donated through the postmortem program, one in Sydney and one locally. And our goal is to keep working closely with the community and with the researchers to ensure we can make a difference for people living with brain cancer. This is our team, and we just want to take a moment to say thank you to all of you, because I know many of you do regularly donate samples to the brain bank, so please know we're doing everything we can to make sure those samples are put to good use and getting to the researchers who need them. If anybody does have any questions about biobanking or anything, please feel free to come and have a chat or to speak to the brain bank coordinators who can always give you more information.